2024 is the most important election year of our lives. But in Kalamazoo County, democracy isn't once in a lifetime. It's an everyday effort by ordinary people like you to improve the well-being of our communities, our loved ones, and ourselves.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Inside Kalamazoo podcast. I am Dakota Shapiro. I'm the Communications Committee Chair for the Kalamazoo County Democratic Party. And today I'm with Jessica Swartz.
And I'm Jessica Swartz, and I'm running for Congress in the 4th District here in Michigan.
How's the campaign going?
It's going really well. We've
Okay.
got some wonderful momentum coming in, especially after Kamala and Tim came on board. And we're excited for the next 62 days.
62 days, yes. The general is coming up pretty quick. This year is melting away.
Oh my gosh.
Like. I imagine, especially with you working so much with this. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to run for office and what were your motivations? Why are you here? What's leading you here?
Yeah, it's kind of always been a calling for me. I see being a public servant as my service to the country. I was never in the military, but this is something that I can do to help our country and our democracy. That's kind of the big picture. Sure. On the smaller level, I really just want to be able to help people have their voices heard, because there's a lot of people whose voices are not heard. And I have been given the ability platform to spread the word, and that's what I'd like to use it for.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about some of what you're running on. I know that abortion and IVF, those are big topics today in the media and politically. So just start out, what's your position on reproductive rights and IVF?
Well, to me, it's pretty basic. What somebody decides to do with their body and whether to have a family is between them, their family, their doctor, and their God if they have one. And the government shouldn't be anywhere near that. Sure.
Okay. How about IVF? Or I guess that's same thing, right? That's what people do with their body.
Same thing. And and I'll just say, without IVF, I wouldn't have my family. So I, have directly benefited from this ability to be able to choose how and when to have a family when conventional methods don't work.
So in 22, we had a proposition come up to about reproductive rights. How did your district vote on that in 22?
We won, or it won in our district, in the 4th District. I think it was by 1.5, 2 points, something like that. Sure. So it was, it was close, but it clearly showed that the majority of the people in the 4th District are in favor of women being able to make their own decisions in this area. Now,
you have an opponent in this race, like most people do. Bill Huizenga, the current congressman for Congressional District 4. What is his stance on this subject? Do you know?
He is about as far opposite from me as you can get on this topic. For example, the day after the Dobbs decision came out, which is the decision that overturned Roe, he went on the internet and the news celebrating that, saying he'd been working for this since college. And so this is, not something that is important to him as far as we can tell. And in fact, he right now has the opportunity to support a bill that would protect access to IVF. And he has chosen so far not to do that.
Really? Okay.
To include also, he has the opportunity to support a bill to protect access to contraception. And he has chosen so far not to do that.
Really?
So we're not talking just about, abortion is bad enough, right?
Sure.
This is a woman's body or your choice. He and the people who support him want to go farther.
Really interesting. The contraception one surprises me that you wouldn't vote to protect contraception. Why do you think that is? Why do you think he wouldn't do that?
Well, pulling on some of my background, I know that the story has to do with the concept of life and when life begins.
Okay.
And again, I have no issue with individuals holding that position. Where I have issue is when they try to get the government to impose that position on others. And, in fact, Huizenga voted in favor of the Life at Conception Act. And this is something that would outlaw access to abortion across the country. And two very important points about this is, first of all, he took this vote after the district here passed Prop 2.
Really?
So he knows that the majority of his own voters are in favor of this, and he still voted against it. And to me, that's a representative's job, is to represent the people in his own district.
Represent the will of his constituents.
Yeah, and then the second point about that is that the Alabama Supreme Court, when it outruled IVF, used the same terminology, the same legal basis that was in the Life at Conception Act in order to outlaw IVF in Alabama. So it's the same. He can say whatever he wants to, but if you look at the voting record and the language he voted for in that act and the language that the Alabama Supreme Court relied on, it's almost identical.
Right. It sounds like this Life at Conception Act is intended to just get like no meat in the middle when it comes to abortion. This is a full removal, restriction of it completely.
Exactly.
So
and again, I have no problem if people believe that.
Okay.
There is nothing wrong with you holding that belief personally. If you don't believe in abortion, don't have one.
Sure. Okay.
You know, it's, again, when you're trying to impose that belief on other people, that I take issue.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So speaking on abortion and IVF treatment, recently, while in Michigan, former President Trump said that this is in quotes, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatments. Health insurance companies are not currently obligated to cover IVF treatments, which can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. Is that something the government can mandate? And what are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, certainly they can, the same as they did in the ACA. You know, the government mandated, insurance companies couldn't refuse to cover you because of pre-existing conditions and that sorts of things. And I mean, I will say for me personally, it cost more than tens of thousands of dollars when we went through this.
Okay.
And I was in a good enough position to be able to take that money out of my retirement account in order to pay for it. But many, many people are not in that type of a position. And if that's the case, again, money shouldn't stand in your way of having the family you want to have. But realistically, Trump's never going to sign something like that.
Okay.
I mean, right? The point we need to do here, what we need to really focus on is what I can do and what Huizenga has chosen not to do in order to protect those rights.
Sure.
And I'm going to do whatever I can if elected to protect those rights.
So it sounds like you just sort of mentioned there that you've had your own journey with IVF and trying to get that. Or trying to get that for yourself. So you're very connected to this personally, which I think is pretty important, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, very much so.
So finishing up like abortion and IVF, could you just remind us what Prop 3, that was back in 22, we talked about this for a moment earlier. What does that protect in Michigan? What did Prop 3 protect?
You know, and I knew you were going to ask this, so I looked it up because I didn't want to say it wrong. But the first one, and this is the one that everybody thinks about, I think, is just establishing the right to reproductive freedom. So that includes making any decisions about pregnancy, prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum, contraception, sterilization, abortion, the whole thing. It is not just abortion, including miscarriage management. We've heard a lot about that lately.
Sure.
I mean, many women who have abortions are because of miscarriages. And carrying a fetus that is no longer viable in your body could be fatal to the mother. But then the other part that's in this, and I had to remind myself, is that it allows the state to regulate abortion after fetal viability. So meaning after that baby can live on its own outside of the mother, the state can regulate it, but it can't prohibit a medically needed abortion to protect the life or physical health of the patient.
Okay.
So I found that, that's in there.
Sure.
So this whole notion of it took everything out, it didn't. And it kept that provision in there.
So fetal viability, is that, so that's up to the point where the baby, just for my clarification, when the baby's in the womb, or the fetus is in the womb, and it can be taken out and survive, that's considered fetal viability?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Now, of course, with science, I mean, that was the same thing in Roe v. Wade, too. And since in those 50 years, science has definitely advanced that moment of viability. And, that's probably why they use that term instead of using a particular, number of weeks or months.
Okay. Now, it sounds like that's an attempt to sort of find a common ground or a compromise. Would you say that sort of is? Because it sounds like, you can have an abortion up until the fetus is viable, and then therefore it gets cut off. Would you say that's kind of a compromise with those on the other end of the spectrum?
I don't know the background that went into all of that. I would guess probably. I think, I do know there's a lot of people who take issue with what they call, with a late term abortion. But really, again, if you look at the numbers, almost all of those are exactly what the exception is in there for the life and health of the mother.
Okay.
I would guess they put the language in to capture them.
So outside of abortion and IVF, we talked about that for a minute now. What platforms are you running on, and what do you hope to accomplish if elected to Congress?
Yeah. Well, the first one really is just to try to lower the cost of living. Things are just too expensive. I am an attorney, and my husband works for Western, and we're struggling still, to get all the bills paid and all of these things. And so I would like to really try to lower the cost of living. And I think a couple ways we can do that are looking at the cost of prescription drugs, and how much people are paying for those. And Congress took a good step in putting a cap on the price of insulin for Medicare payments, which, by the way, Huizenga voted against. Just interesting. Throw that in there. I think we can expand on that. Yeah. And then I'd also the cost of living is just, it's too much. High. It's impossible for anybody to really get into the market. It's hard for those of us in the market to stay there. And so I think that's something that I would like to really work on. So there's that. And then obviously, I'd really like to protect Lake Michigan and clean up our drinking water. We know here in Kalamazoo, we've had paper factories that have been dumping PFAS in, and for all of our health and safety and that of our kids and our grandkids, we need to work on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially, that cost of living, we felt the burn. We've had plenty of instances in the last few years where we've had to enter into either boil water advisories or just don't drink the water or use it at all because of the PFAS. So that one especially is very important.
And we know that it especially affects communities of color too, because they're the ones who most likely, because of the redlining and all of that, had to live by these factories. Right.
This historical precedence has set, just even if we're not doing that anymore, the effects of it are still in place.
Absolutely. And overarching all of that is, just democracy in general.
Right. And we're progressing forward, and hopefully we keep at it. So speaking of progressing
a republic
forward,
if you can keep it.
A republic if you can keep it. I like that quote. That's a good one. Who was that? That was Franklin. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. What issues do you, and now you've talked about a few of these now, but what issues, sort of 60,000 foot view or whatever, do you and Congressman Huizenga differ on?
Well, in addition to what we've already talked about, he doesn't believe a woman should be able to make her own healthcare decisions. He didn't vote in favor of the cap on insulin. He didn't vote in the favor of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that is bringing jobs to West Michigan, cleaning up our water, fixing our roads, all of those things. Another one of the things that we disagree on is community project funding. And so what this is Congress has allocated money to specifically go to the districts to support projects in the area, cool. And for here in Kalamazoo, it could go to support housing. It could go to support, we know that maternal and infant health are big issues. And, this is money that our taxpayers have already paid. They have paid their taxes. This money is going other places. Oh, really? It could come here.
Right, absolutely.
And in fact, Huizenga is the only Michigan representative, Democrat or Republican, who doesn't believe in voting for these. It doesn't believe in the community funder projects.
Really?
Yeah. So it's literally going everywhere else in the state except this district.
So these are items in what the congressional budget that congressmen and women request for their district. That's all that is.
Yeah, we all pay local, state, federal taxes, right? So these are the federal taxes, and obviously part of the federal taxes go for the big stuff, the Department of Defense, the big environmental things, those. But there's also part of the federal taxes that come back to us as taxpayers, or are supposed to come back to us as taxpayers, right? There is in every budget a set amount of dollars that is allocated in the budget, already spent, intended to be spent for individual districts, for federal money to go to individual districts. Huizenga doesn't believe in those, which means there is none of that money is coming into our district. I mean, and some of that money could be used to help the housing.
Sure.
Could be used to clean up drinking water. Could be used to do all of those things. I mean, and it's not all just city stuff. I mean, it could go to help the farmers too. It could go to, I mean, we know that the infrastructure bill is bringing broadband out to the rural districts, but how much more could we get to for folks out there,
right?
Because a lot of this district, we do have a lot of rural area, and they also need the support and the funding just as much as the urban areas do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know from when Congressman Upton was in our district here, he brought some of that money into the district and it did some really, really great things for us.
So do you know why Bill Huizenga does not want these community funded projects in our district?
Well, he says it's because of the deficit.
Okay.
And I agree, the deficit's a big problem. It's a bipartisan problem. It's something we need to tackle. But I don't know how, with a straight face, he can say that while he's still trying to fight for tax cuts for people like the DeVos family.
Okay.
And these other gazillionaires who don't need the tax cuts, right? So
who taxing would help.
Right.
Maybe help mitigate some of that.
Close some loopholes or something, and so it doesn't really track that, well, I'm not going to bring, we don't want any of these community funded projects here in this district because the money needs to go to the VASA so they can get another helicopter to go back and forth to volleyball practice.
Yeah,
whatever it is, yeah.
What should the voters of Michigan's 4th Congressional know about their current congressman?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, I believe that the representatives should represent all the people in the district, even those that they disagree with. At the very least, listen to the people that they disagree with, because you never know where the good ideas are going to come from. They could come from anywhere. And Huizenga has made it clear that he does not. I've talked to so many people over and over on the phone. I said, I tried to talk to him. I tried to email him. I tried to call him, and his staff completely shut me down. As soon as I raised a question he wasn't sure about, he literally turned away and walked away from me.
You're kidding.
No,
Wait,
this is what people, I didn't see it, but this is what people have been
sharing that's what they share.
This is what they're sharing with me.
That he turns and wow.
Just completely anybody who disagrees with him. And so I think fundamentally, that's the biggest one for me, is that I have said, and I, will stick by this, I will listen to any reasonable position. And I don't care what side of the aisle it comes from. And I'm going to take whatever the best thing there is we can do for our district and our country and run with that. Okay,
absolutely. So you mentioned there that you're hearing stuff from voters, you're out there talking to people. When you're out there knocking on doors, what questions are you hearing? Or what are people asking you?
The first question people say is, are you Democrat or Republican? To me, that's a little disturbing, because I'll even say, well, are there any questions I can answer for you about me or my campaign? Or nope, you're Democrat. That's all I need to know. And I'm that actually does bother me as well. I mean, even though it's an easy check mark for me, I think we should be as informed as we can be. And it should be more than what letter is next to your name. What are you going to do once you get there? So that really has been the biggest one. Other questions, I guess, have come to this abortion issue because, people are saying, we're dialed in, right? We eat, breathe, sleep this stuff all the time. But the average voter, well, I thought we took care of that. I thought in Michigan that was already set. And that's where we need to come in and explain, no, if the federal government, the supremacy clause, it's in the Constitution, if the federal government comes in and outlaws abortion, that's going to void our Constitution, provision of our Constitution, as long as the federal law says it intends to do that, which we know that they will. So that's been a big one too, of getting that out there. Yeah, it's settled for now, but if Huizenga remains in office, he's going to continue voting for these bills that would overturn our Constitution here in the state.
Definitely a look at how, or an insight into how divided we can be sometimes as a country, with stuff we've done can just be overturned later. And that can be, I imagine, so confusing for voters who are like, does it ever end, right? Do we ever get to the point where we're past this? We've made our decision. We're going to move on.
Well, and I think that's a big part that we've seen in the last 20 years is it used to be that way. I mean, and as a lawyer, you're trained to rely on precedent. You know, you don't, even if you disagree with prior precedent, unless there's something really, truly wrong with it, you don't overturn it.
Sure.
And that's what gave us this feeling of stability, both in the courts and in Congress and in the executive branch. And that has just gone away in the last 20 years.
I didn't think of it that way. Because now you have precedents. It was a precedent yesterday, and now it's not anymore.
Now it's not.
It's stricken away. I imagine that can be really confusing, and not only for lawyers, but for the
that's what I mean. Like, it's right. I mean, it's something that I've studied and spent my career working on. But for people who are just trying to go out and make a living and make their payments and drop their kids off at school and take the dog to the vet, like, this is not something that's at the top of their mind. And I feel like that's where our job as government officials comes in, to learn this stuff, know this stuff, so that we can then make the best decisions on behalf of those people who are just trying to live their lives.
So we've talked a bit now about, just how difficult or how unstable politics can be, and that things are changing so often. And like you said, that one person said, like, oh, I thought we were done with this, right? And then we settled abortion, we moved on, and we clearly haven't. So for folks watching this podcast episode right now, who are tired of that, and they want to start solidifying their stuff. They want, like, the stuff that they vote for, the stuff they're in favor for, like abortion and IVF. What can they do to, one, support your campaign, but to support these initiatives so that they can keep these rights that we fought so hard for already?
I think first and foremost is just get informed.
Okay.
Go online to reputable sources. Facebook is not a reputable source. I'm just going to throw that out there, or Twitter or TikTok or any of those things. Find some reputable sources and educate yourself so that you know the questions to ask. I would say that's first and foremost. Second, get in touch with either, my campaign, jessicaswartz.vote. You can volunteer there. We're here at the KCDP office. Come in here.
Okay.
Or if you don't want to I've talked to a lot of people, like, I'm done with the politics. I'm not picking a party. Great, fine. Pick an issue then. Reach out to Planned Parenthood. Reach out to the League of Conservation Voters. Reach out to League of Women Voters. And they are nonpartisan groups that are advocating for these issues that are so important to all of us.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on. We really appreciate having you.
Thanks, Dakota. It's been great. I really appreciate it.
So this has been the Inside Kalamazoo podcast. If you enjoy, I'm looking over here now. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all in the next video.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed our show, please like, follow, and subscribe through whatever medium you're watching this on or listening to this on. And if you're interested, we would really appreciate any donations at kzoodems.com. That's KZOODEMS.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Inside Kalamazoo is a production of the Kalamazoo County Democratic Party, hosted by Dakota Shapiro, with administrative and scripting assistance by Pam Jackson. Production designed by Gavin Rance and editing by Mike Ryder. Theme music from the Krellboyns. Produced by Dakota Shapiro, Pam Jackson, Gavin Rance, and Mike Ryder.